I was as enthusiastic as anyone in this country with Barack Obama and his campaign, and I supported him, and I support him not only because he's my president. I expect to vote for him again next year, just to be clear. But it's so different from what I thought and what I expected. And a person who campaigned on change, the moment he got elected, he brought Wall Street right back into the White House in the most literal way. They're in there all the time. I'm in there once in a while, and I see them all the time in there. And that's how it really works.
You're listening to Jeffrey Sachs in conversation with Roy Eisenhart. This is City Arts and Lectures.
If, as a country, we didn't have the attention deficit disorder that makes it almost impossible for someone in political office to propose a strategy that takes longer than a year to implement, what would you lay out as the long-term bailout, if that's the right term, of our or repositioning, let me use that term, of our economy to address this adaptation to globalization and our labor markets, our educational systems, et cetera?
Well, I think that I have a position which unfortunately is a little bit heretical, though actually, as I said, a lot of Americans, when thinking about it and discussing it, agree with this. We've arrived at a point where we can't have a civilized, united country unless we start investing again in a serious way through the public sector in our children, in our neighborhoods, in higher education, in science, in technology, in our infrastructure, and the things that are really the backbone of a society. Private business, absolutely. That's where the jobs have to be created. But if they can't find skilled workers here, if they can't, they'll import them. That's how a lot of our skilled labor force is filled right now, or they go abroad. This is no future for this country. And we have to remember the fundamentals again. We have to get back to the basics of a population that is well educated and properly skilled, children who grow up in a safe and a healthy environment, mothers that can leave their children with child care or preschool that's safe for kids, not as some bizarre exception, but as a norm of a decent society. An infrastructure that doesn't look like what it is, built 50 years ago. Because when you travel abroad, and I'm traveling abroad all the time, you come back to American roads and American airports and, oh, it's sad. It's sad. It's shocking, actually. And so we need to make these investments again. We can't pay our bills the way we're doing it right now if the rich won't pay taxes, and if our big companies won't pay taxes, and if our big companies have a deal with, the IRS so that they can funnel all their international profits through the Cayman Islands, and not as tax evasion, mind you, though there's a lot of that, but as legal tax avoidance scripted with the Internal Revenue Service, because these companies are so politically influential. There are, for our big high-tech companies in this state, for example, typically they lease at almost no cost their IP, the intellectual property, to an offshore entity, say in the Cayman Islands. And then that offshore entity, which pays a nominal sum back to the U.S. headquarters, leases the IP at a very high rate to the international operations of that company, so that all the profits earned worldwide get sucked into one venue like the Cayman Islands, which has zero taxes. And that's how our companies, through a simple connivance, in a very tricky but in a way transparent, though not very public, manner, are able to get their tax rates down to almost nothing. And that's why we have, ladies and gentlemen, corporate tax collections in a period of booming profits that are at their lowest in decades right now. We're collecting about 1.4 percentage points of GNP in corporate income this year. We haven't been this low for decades. And what are the companies asking for? Amnesties, tax cuts. President Obama's playing along. That's where the real power lies in this country. That's where the funding is. That's where the bundling of campaign contributions lies. And these companies are pushing more for amnesties to bring home offshore tax-free money, home tax-free again, even though the last time this amnesty was done about 7 years ago, it led indeed not to job creation, but to stock purchases and to mega compensation packages for the CEOs of these companies. So we've arrived at a point where we can't pay for civilization, which is why I obviously have taken Oliver Wendell Holmes' famous line that when he said, "I like to pay taxes, that's the way I pay for civilization." We're not paying for civilization right now, and the problem starts with the richest people who have gained so much political power as well as wealth and have become so detached from the reality of America that I think they really don't know the damage that they're doing in this country. Warren Buffett gets it, and he says it, but when he says it, he doesn't have a lot of colleagues around in the Billionaires Club that are joining him on this. And this, I think, is really the fundamental problem. And if I could show just a couple of slides, if we could go to past this one, to the slide, I think we labeled it as the non-security government. I want to show you, ladies and gentlemen, this one. Great. So this is a list of what's called in the jargon the non-security discretionary government of the federal government. It's the budget lines that are not Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, or the Pentagon. Okay? And let's just look at them for one moment. It includes Congress. It includes the judiciary at all federal levels. It includes all agriculture programs, all Commerce Department programs, all education programs, almost all Department of Energy programs except the nuclear weapons programs in DOE. Most of the health and human services except for Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans benefits. Almost everything in housing and urban development. Department of Interior, all our environmental programs. Department of Justice, Department of Labor, all our labor market, job training, and so forth. Department of Transportation, Department of Treasury, Environmental Protection Agency, Small Business Administration, and on and on. Remember that list. That's not a small list of things, right? That's what we think of as government beyond a few programs. Now let me show you what's actually happening to this non-security budget. If you turn to the next slide, which is non-security discretionary spending. Back in 1976, all the way on the left-hand side of the graph, we used to spend about 5% of gross national product for those categories, 5% of our national income. That's less than Europe, but it was 5%. And then in came President Reagan in 1980. Look at the chutes and ladders, the collapse of spending in these areas. The discretionary budget fell from 5% down to about 2.5% in all of those categories. We stopped doing things in this country. We stopped having an energy program. We stopped having research and development programs other than NIH. We stopped having job training programs at scale. We stopped having the things that we stopped having environmental programs to a large extent. EPA has squeezed by. Then came 2008, and you see this sharp spike and then drop. That's the stimulus program. Well, great. What's that supposed to do? Huh? Now, here's the bottom line. What are we going to do about this? There are only two things to do about this. One is to do something on the revenue side or something on the spending side. On the spending side, what can you do?